Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. Thank you for being with us. This segment is brought to you by my company, Bull Realty. For customized asset and occupancy solutions, give me a call or visit bullrealty.com. Today we're talking about single-tenant net lease investment properties. My guests are Nancy Miller. She's with the Net Lease Investment Group with Bull Realty, and Tim Kinney. He's Senior Director with Marcus Millichap in their lending division. And we're going to talk about some kind of fun facts in single-tenant net lease. We're going to talk about some tips to increase returns, and then some mistakes you really want to avoid when investing in single-tenant net lease investment properties. And let's start with tips to increase returns, because I know some real estate investors like to think that they like to get returns between 10 and 16% over the life of an investment property ownership, but single tenant, I guess, is a lot safer type return, and you're not going to get the really big returns. But what are some tips to increase? We mentioned one, I guess, is leverage, right?
Absolutely. And also, if you can find some leases that have periodic rent increases, some in the QSR, casual dining industry, have annual or every 5-year increases, so that improves your leverage over the term of the lease. Another way to maximize your return is to consider a lease that has a shorter duration remaining. It may be a quality tenant, but maybe they're 5 or 6 years, not 10 or 15 years left. Your cap rate's going to be a better or higher cap rate by taking on, quote unquote, the risk of that, which is probably, if it's been in place for a long time and if the real estate fundamentals are good, it's really not much of a risk. And thirdly, a lot of investors are considering a franchise versus a corporate guarantee, because the franchisee has, quote unquote, a little bit higher risk. As a result, the cap rate will reflect to be a little bit higher as well. But if it's a large franchisee with good guarantee, good funding, good and so forth, it shouldn't be that much of a concern. And those are all kind of some basic ways so that you could increase your leverage, rather increase your returns and your yield over time versus a long-term flat lease with a very great high-grade tenant. Yeah. It's another way to...
And I like the idea of the risk of a shorter lease term, but that's the scary part, I guess, of single-tenant net lease investing, is that you only have one tenant. If they leave, you got a vacant building. What are some ways, Nancy, that an investor could get an idea of how the tenant's doing and that they might renew or not?
Great question. Some tenants will report sales in their leases. Typically, a corporate tenant, a corporate guaranteed tenant, today we're seeing fewer and fewer of them reporting sales in their leases. The franchise tenant might have a tendency to do so. You just will have to understand, visit the site, do a mystery shopping, talk with store management, schmooze with them a little bit, look at where their nearest competitors are, look how their parking lots are, do your own boots on the ground looking at things. And also, if you can determine if that is a franchise, what does that franchisee own? Are they successful in their operations? Take a measure of their personnel. Are the people in the store look like they're happy there, and so on and so forth? Check the store at different times of the day to see what's going on, and just play dumb and say, how do you all fare against the other stores of your type in your district? Oh, we're always 1 or 2. Oh, that's great. That's great. Those kinds of things.
Can you also look at kind of the size of the store and see if that's if that particular tenant is that's the size that they're doing now? I know in retail some tenants are downsizing.
You can look at the prototype, and is it the current prototype of the store? One thing that we're seeing is that with more technology and more takeout, especially in the QSR side, we're seeing some of the national tenants looking to shrink their footprint, and they're looking to use technology, and they know that a lot of their customers now are using Grubhub and other things, and they're doing less sit-down dining and they're doing more takeout dining. So it will alter the prototype over time of what that tenant brand might need for bricks and mortar. They'll still need to service them, but it might not be as large of a dining area, for example.
Okay, well, some good tips. And Tim, when it comes to financing, is there any way to kind of increase returns there?
Well, it's interesting. We have one large, I call it more of a debt fund, that likes to fund the short leases. They like anything 5 years and under, which is very rare. They're very sophisticated. They like the credit investment grade tenant, and they'll match the term of the loan to the lease term. So, and then give great rates and terms. So, but they have to be in good locations. They have to go through some scrutiny as far as underwriting, location number one, and tenant, of course. And then we have other lenders. I have one that comes to mind. They don't care how long the lease is because they're underwriting the borrower. So they're switching over, and as long as you have, again, the net worth, liquidity, experience, wherewithal, they'll lend past the lease term.
Yeah.
So,
if I may add, we're seeing, I have a Family Dollar, for example, that has 11 plus years left on the lease term, and it went dark last April as a result of Walmart neighborhood store coming and just kind of hurting their business. Well, we put it on the market, and I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a toughie. I have had more activity on this vacant Family Dollar than I have had on many, many of my listings, because there's a buyer group out there who is opportunistic. And that buyer group says, I'll go in there, I'll figure it out. Meanwhile, I have a national guaranteed lease, they're paying me rent. When I figure it out, I'll go to them and I'll negotiate, do you want to be bought out of your lease? And they'll say, yeah, sure, of course. And when can we sign? And they will backfill it with an appropriate tenant or two, if they subdivide it, and it's a win-win for that type of opportunistic investor who knows how to go out and seek a new tenant. It's a good play, and many, many people are doing it.
Yeah, and Nancy explained that well, and most of you know dark means that the tenant's still paying, but they're not open for business, and in retail that obviously makes you nervous, but a good way to increase returns. Now, let's talk about mistakes to avoid. And Tim, if you'll start us out, sometimes I see buyers buying kind of lower priced range commercial properties, and they'll tend to go to their banker. And they go to their banker, and the banker says, gives them a quote or tells them they don't like the deal, and sometimes I find that bank really at that particular time is really not doing loans on those particular kinds of properties, and they don't want to lose the banking relationship. So sometimes it doesn't seem like they're completely open with the borrower. Then the investor goes away because of what one lender told them. What are some mistakes to avoid when you're kind of sourcing loans?
that happened to me yesterday. Funny you'd say that. Well, it's we look at it where we have. My business is nationwide for borrowers anywhere in the world, actually. So we have very professional deal teams. So first of all, the lenders are single tenant net lease lenders. That's what they do for a living. That's all they do. And they will lend anywhere in the country for a borrower anywhere, a property anywhere in the country for a borrower anywhere in the country. So we're not going to let you buy anything that's too risky because we're going to underwrite the daylights out of it, as Nancy well knows. Mm-hmm. So that's first of all. If you have experienced deal teams that know these tenants, I'm financing a Firestone right now. Several of those have come to market. And our lenders have already seen the financials and have already underwritten these deals. So we can tell you what is a good tenant and what we consider a good location, what are good store sales. and do the forensics for the investor.
And I like that you're doing that, and that this is your focus. It's your source of funds focus. It's not just somebody that's kind of doing everything. I like that a lot. Nancy, what are some other mistakes to avoid? I know sometimes the devil's in the details in these leases and things, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I could spend all the time you have on this show with this one, but I think that the purchaser has to be realistic. If they in baseball analogy, if they can get a double instead of a home run, that's great. And to get a double, they're going to protect themselves by making sure they or their attorney look at all the due diligence information. Make sure that they do third-party reports and don't do it on the cheap. If it's a phase one or if it is a survey. I had a case with a Church's Chicken in the Midwest where the buyer is a neurologist and first-time investor. And I said, you don't have to do this, but I recommend that you get a phase one, and it's going to cost you X dollars. And he said, okay, if you think so. P.S., the phase one showed some issues, and we had to get a phase two. And in that case, we negotiated with the seller. Since they were surprised and didn't have a phase one to show us to begin with, they paid for the phase two. But there, you just have to, the devil is in the detail, as you said, and don't shortchange yourself. And it's not a get quick rich type of thing. You want to buy something of quality. You think about, would I sell this to my father, or would I sell this to my mother or my grandmother? You know, so you want to do that, be that cautious. It's just good business sense.
Yeah, yeah, and I think being safe and avoiding mistakes in any property type or sector, really one of the key points is to use a specialist. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a show listener and you call me to buy or sell a single tenant net lease property, that's not what I focus on. I'm going to say call Nancy, because you know the ins and outs of it. You need financing. Call someone like Tim and does it every second of every day. I lead a team that sells office buildings. If you want to buy or sell office buildings, I'm your man, right? So use a specialist. Well, to end the show, let's talk about some trends and maybe some fun facts on single tenants.
Okay. All right. I'm going to tell you, how many hamburgers does McDonald's serve per second?
Too many.
Okay. Here you go.
Sorry,
Drum
McDonald's.
roll. 75 burgers are served per second around the world in 37,000 locations globally.
Wow.
Imagine that. I'll give you one more. 58% of all of Americans go to a fast food restaurant how often? Once a week.
And they're all denying it.
Yeah.
And they're all denying it, and they only get the lettuce. They don't eat the French fries and the burgers.
They don't eat the buns.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. A quickie other one. What QSR type do women prefer the most?
No.
Starbucks.
Oh.
And how about the guys? What do they prefer most?
A bar?
McDonald's.
Oh, McDonald's.
Yes. There you go. I'll stop there. It's, I've got more, but it's riveting there.
That's excellent. Well, what would you guys have any final tip for our audience related to single tenant net lease properties?
I think you said the right thing. Do your homework. Rely upon experts, whoever they are. Because the market, there's such high demand and limited supply right now, you have to be patient and use resources. We find things that are off the market that a normal buyer will not see, and we can bring them to them. And also utilizing lenders who can get the deal done. Tim and I just did we were trying to do a deal that the 1031 buyer was trying to squeeze out the interest rate, and he wound up going with another lender that we think won't be able to close the deal, won't go to the finish line. So he's going to be with the short hairs on this.
And he's a 1031 buyer, so he could have a big problem.
He could have a big problem.
We see that once a week, someone in the branch at a bank tells the client they can do X, which we know is not reasonable, but the client chooses maybe a regional or local bank that's not experienced in single tenant net lease or doesn't know the gotchas. And then it takes 30 days for you to get the third party reports back in and for them to go to investment committee or loan committee. And then the guy gets turned down because of either the rates incorrect or the terms are incorrect or someone on that loan committee is having a bad day or they want compensating balance. They want to have deposits in the bank or whatever. There's always some story. And they come back to me and say, hey, can you bail me out? And now we're, and we're in a 1031. It's interesting because over half of that business is 1031 exchange. It's very, very vibrant.
And then you might have a seller who says, hey, I gave you your time, you didn't do it, I'm moving on to the next buyer, and you're out of luck. Nancy, Tim, great information. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And thank you for joining us around the country. Please connect with us on your favorite social media. We appreciate you contacting us. We appreciate you sharing the show. Until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh, and join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show. Appreciate the show? Consider referring business or doing business with our sponsors. Bull Realty is a commercial real estate sales, leasing, and advisory firm doing business throughout the Southeast, headquartered in Atlanta. Visit bullrealty.com for more information. Commercial Agent Success Strategies provides video training for commercial agents. This training gets 5-star reviews from even the most experienced brokers. Learn more at commercialagentsuccess.com. You're invited to connect with us on your favorite social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't miss a show of special interest to you. Be sure and subscribe to the show on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And at the show website, creshow.com, you can subscribe for a weekly email announcing the show topic and guest. While you're there, you also found more videos and podcasts. Thank you for watching or listening to America's Commercial Real Estate Show.